to start building themselves up, because I'm not a big fan of the self-esteem movement. I'm a big fan of self-esteem as something you build through trying, failing, and succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you try, you fuck something up, you try again, you overcome, and that builds confidence. If you're sitting in your house and you have no job, you have no accomplishments, you dropped out of school, you're overweight, you're overweighted, you're underfucked, and you're over depressed, you don't really have anything to be confident about. At that point, if you confident, it's a kind of fake it if you make it, but it's a paper tiger, for a lack of a better term. It's just a guy who's pretending to be confident because he has nothing backing those accomplishments. And that's why I think lifting is such a great thing, because when you go in there on the first day of strong lifts, you lift, like, I think you only work with the bar.
Mm-hmm.
The next week you go back in and you have like the little 5-pound plates or whatever. The next week it's 10-pound plates. And you get these slow progression of successes where you can see that, okay, I'm sticking with something, I'm improving at it, I'm getting better, and that builds confidence.
Right.
So
until you get to that point where when you're lifting 2-3 plates on a deadlift or a squat, and you kind of look at somebody who's making fun of you for being weak or scrawny or that, and you just kind of like, you put in the work so it doesn't really phase you.
Yeah, that's kind of the important thing you have to keep in mind with guys, because that's why I tend to strongly dislike the guys who pop on and chat and are like, oh, I only bang 9s and 10s. I mean, your girl is a 7. Why the fuck are you banging 7? Couldn't get anything better? And it's like, okay, well, if you're banging a 7 and 2 years ago you were banging 2s and 3s, that's a huge progress for you. You're doing much better. Mm-hmm. And who knows? The guy who says he's only banging 9s and 10s is probably a blind dude.
Oh yeah, blind or ego invested. It's always his kink. Because I've seen so many. I had a guy actually refer to me as his high quality women, his version of 9s and 10s. Like 34-year-old single mom, a 25-year-old tatted up girl with fake boobs. I'm like, come on, guy. Like, me, I always like clustering around the mean. I think all girls are 4s, 5s, and 6s anyway. And then on top of that, if you're with a girl for any length of time, like, everybody gets old. So the ravages of time, yesterday's 9 is tomorrow's 7. So you can't really get mad at a guy. Let's say, I won't mention any names, but picture this guy who's maybe gotten triple-digit notch counts with all kinds of girls ranging from 3 to 10, whatever you want to say. And then he eventually finds one that hasn't had any of the red flags that other girls have. And then maybe they're now in their 40s, and then she's gone. That girl was originally an 8. Now she's kind of a 5, because, I mean, a 45-year-old woman, they don't come in 8s, and that's fine. But then to have a young guy turn around and say, look at you, you couldn't get anything better than this. Like, it's really, I don't even know the proper adjective to attach to that, other than off-putting. Maybe naive.
Well, at that point, the guy is just being a huge bundle of sticks.
Aw, thanks for saving my monetization with that. That's wonderful.
So, it's one of those things that kind of piss me off, because we have a lot of guys who are trying to improve, and you have all of these guys. So I think they read one chapter in like a mystery book from 2003, and that happened to be the AMOG chapter. Yeah. And now they're around Twitter and chat sections and whatever, and just trying to, knock guys down a peg or two, and let guys build themselves up. And there are enough things out there in the world that will knock you a peg or two down if you fuck up. You don't need, a bunch of guys doing that pro bono on Twitter to make themselves feel better.
That's true. Yeah, I'd always say, play the ball, don't play the man. Like, even if a guy is acting a certain way, if you say, for example, what you're doing is like a bag of sticks or a bundle of sticks, as opposed to you are a bundle of sticks, there's a difference in that between tough love and then, like you said, the knocking down a peg or two.
Yeah, you're engaging in way too much bundle of stickery.
Man, I got to come up with a catchier term for this. Maybe cigarettes. That's the other euphemism, isn't it?
I don't know. We could just find some word in Polish or something and use that instead.
Ooh, I like that. I'll have to learn some Polish here. The only word I know is dupa, and funnily enough, Polish girl I used to work with. She's probably the best female sailor I've ever worked with. She's very good work ethic, probably because she came from Poland. But she used to call me a bundle of sticks for about 6 years because she thought it was hilarious. Little side story there. No real meaning to it. No lesson learned, but just thought it was really funny. But she taught me that dupa means ass.
Uh,
Like, thanks. That's a minute I'm not getting back.
Yeah, I just think with guys, it's just important to kind of go in your own pace and just kind of try to focus on, pound more lifted, one more dollar in the bank, one more girl bang, one hotter girl bang, and just focus on that. And, at some point you're going to have, every guy has to have a slump buster on occasion, or, there's the girl you picked up when you've been drinking a bit too much. You come home and you sleep with her and you're like, oh my God, that girl was a 9. You wake up sober and you notice, oh shit, she only has one arm.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Every now and then you got to go back to the bush leagues till you get recruited again. No shame in that.
And it just kind of goes that way. And I don't see a point. If the guy is making improvements and the guy is getting generally better across time, then stop being a bundle of sticks.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because it's my second favorite field report from the Married Red Pill. It was this guy. He just got divorced. My favorite one's a 52-year-old guy who basically turned his marriage around. But this guy, he's divorced now, and he realized he got zeroed out. All the friends sided with the wife. The family sided with the wife. He was essentially by himself. And so he started doing the standard thing, like you said, lifting without his ego. He just wanted to get better and in better shape. And then he realized with women, he had no female skills. So he starts learning to attract plates. And at first he got like chubby 45-year-old girls. And he's like, you know what? This one's a 3, but it's better than a 0. And so he started with that. And then he noticed with that plate, and he hit this point where when he was talking to girls, like this girl was a 5 maybe. And she was kind of being ornery about it. And he goes, you know what? I've got a 4 I can call up right now. Why am I wasting my time with this? And so he started building abundance, even with a girl that was arguably not attractive in any sense of the word. Like, she was old, she was grumpy, but she was there and she was willing. So he had that in his corner. And then he started noticing, he's like, all of a sudden there's these more attractive girls and I have no problem like hanging with them. And he eventually started upgrading his plates progressively, because he always had that one frump in the back corner that, you know what, worst case scenario, at least I got the bag of Cheetos in my house that I could sleep with.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a smart way to go about it, and just focus on the positives and just focus on being better. But one of the things I want to cover too is sometimes you will have to make major life changes if you want. You have to change your context to change yourself, because it's not going to be easy if you're going to radically change who you are, especially for the guys who kind of need to read No More Mr. Nice Guy. If you come from the place where you've been a pushover with no boundaries and everyone is just using you to get whatever they want, at that point, you're probably going to have to move away from that environment to improve beyond a certain limit, because people will start working against you and your improvement effort just because it doesn't fit the image they've constructed in their head of who you are. And you'll get the old, this is not who you are. Why I like the old you better, and so on. So
I agree. People are notorious for that, where they don't want to change their mental model of use. They'd rather you just change your behavior to meet theirs.
And, I think moving is also a good thing to do, because once you move, you're kind of free to reinvent yourself more, because there will be limits to, like, if you're, let's say you've lived in the same city as your parents your whole life, or something. Let's say you're 30 years old and you just moved out of your mom's basement into another apartment for the first time. You kind of want that freedom to create your personality more in accordance with your tastes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the easy thing is, if you're in a constant environment, it's you tend to fall into a comfortable routine, and you need some level of routine, like we talked to with lifting, just either having your gym bag in the car so that once you're done from work, you go straight to the gym, then you go home, or that type of routine. But if your entire life becomes a routine, you'll stop improving sooner or later, because you've kind of reached the peak improvement you can do in that context. It goes, I heard a quote once: if you're the strongest guy in your gym, find a new gym.
Yeah, it's like, was it Groucho Marx? I wouldn't want to be part of any group that would have me as a member.
Yeah, that's Groucho Marx.
That's the one. The only Marx that was any good with his writing.
Oh, actually, I like Karl. Karl Marx was a good writer. Well, his analysis is on point. It's just that his solution is just it's a little bundle of stickery. It tends to It's a solution, but you don't solve the problem of some people having more than others by killing everyone.
Yeah, it's true. But I was thinking too, so then, I mean, that's the obvious thing. I'm a huge fan of that. The one thing I was blessed with is a stepfather who I absolutely hated because I moved out of the house as quickly as I could. I got far from him as I quickly could. And it kind of encouraged me. I think that's horrible when, especially, I think it's a single mom thing or like a divorced mom thing where they want to keep their boy around as long as possible. And so they don't make him hate them enough that he wants to move out and do his own thing. Really do think that's that's one of the greatest purposes of fathers later on in life is to make him hate you so much that you just want to get out of the house.
Never thought about that the way, but I did like the perspective that your dad kicks you out, and then you have to kind of become yourself because you've been ego invested with your parent. I think that's what a lot happens with a lot of the guys. They start off kind of ego invested with their parents.
Yeah.
Then they're ego invested with their high school crew. Then they're ego invested with their wife. And then once the wife divorces them, they have no one to be ego invested with, and they kind of have to look at themselves and try and focus on themselves. And a lot of guys are really uncomfortable with that because they've been focused on they've been given their identity by everyone else for so long that they don't really know who they are. And they kind of have to get to a point where they're comfortable developing their own identity and developing preferences. And that's one of the things that a lot of guys need to work on in relation to women too, to actually have preferences. Get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm not going to sleep with her because she's just not attractive enough for me, and have that preference. Because I've had so many guys come up and dropping that, I just want a girlfriend. Okay, what do you want in a girlfriend? I don't know. I want a girlfriend. And it's like, fuck you, man. I mean, at least have an idea. Do you want, do you want her to be hot, or do you want her to be ugly as sin? Do you want her to be able to cook or not to be able to cook? Do you want her to be pleasant to be around, or do you want her to be a total... Yeah, I'm not going to say that word too. I'm trying to save your mind.
I'll just say high maintenance.
Yeah, so you kind of at least have some degree of preference, and most guys do. So you work with your own preferences. If you're into kind of artsy literature chicks, you may not find them at the club, but you can find them at a bookstore, and just tailor things to that context. And that's why tailoring becomes so important. And I think a lot of guys struggle with the red pill at that point where they've done all the basics. They've got their lifting down. They're in reasonably good shape. They don't dress like they're 12-year-olds heading over for a birthday party. They've stopped living off cereal and candy. They've got their game down, and they've got all these basics sorted, and they kind of have to, and they even learn game to the point where they can comfortably open, run routines, Kino escalate, and so on. And then they have to start kind of figuring out their version of game, because we all have our own version that kind of draws on our strengths, that fits our way of wanting to live life. Like, I fucking hate nightclubs. Can't stand them. So club game was never a big thing for me. So I just had to start doing it in places where I actually wanted to be. So when I do a date now, like I'll tell a girl to meet me somewhere in public, and I'll bounce them to some place that I would go to anyway, even if I didn't have the girl with me. So that way, if the girl flakes, I'm still going to that place. It just so happens I'm going there solo, and I'm going to have to pick up a chick when I'm there, or find someone to talk to. And it's not that complicated.
Yeah, well, it is a little bit, because you mentioned this stuff, and it's all good. And I hear a lot of guys, like I've had a couple clients that do this same thing, that exactly like you said, but they're not being honest with themselves. Like, for example, one wanted to go on a date with this big expensive dinner thing, and he goes, you know what? Even if she doesn't show up, I'd still go there by myself. I'm like, you're not going to go out to medieval times for a date by yourself. Like, nobody does that. So don't make this up. And that's why I really like how you and I both have that similar system of escalating the level of investment based on how worthwhile she is. So like you said, public place to find out she's not fat fishing you. Maybe a coffee house or a museum, because that's $3 and that's, easily enough to walk away until eventually you get to the point where you're both together at your place. But you don't just start there. And so I find there's that self-awareness part, and that's hard. And that's where I hate to say it, but the guys who take things too literal really struggle with what you just said there, because they assume if I just do exactly what Carl did, I'll have the same results Carl did. But it's not true, because at the same time, you're self-aware enough to know that you're doing this stuff for a reason. When you say you're going to go to, say, a museum or a pub, you probably would go by yourself, and you have gone by yourself, but you're not deluding yourself into thinking that a $500 dinner at White Castle is something you were going to do if it wasn't for a girl being there.
No, I think that's the kind of thing guys have to get over, because a lot of the guys start off like, the reason they come and start reading our material is that they've had their ego crushed or injured in some fashion, whether that's being zeroed out in a divorce, whether that's a year-long dry spell, whether that's the girl they've been kind of beta gaming for the better part of 4 years, just got banged by the entire football team in front of them. So they've had their ego to some extent crushed or injured somehow, and they come to us to kind of help rebuild it. And one of the things that they need to kind of work beyond their rationalizations and their own mindset. And it's why I think a lot of people can benefit from working with a personal trainer.
Right.
Because then you have someone who tells you exactly what to do and when to do it, and you have to do it. So they are kind of in control, and you just do what they tell you to. And I think that's what a lot of guys have been doing. And then the person who's been telling them what to do isn't there anymore. But once the person isn't there anymore, then you have to take what you learned from them and work with that. And you have to say, okay, my personal trainer told me to do this. That's because of this. And they have to understand that. And then they have to develop their own preference for what outcomes do I want from my training. And the guys who takes things a little bit too literally just have to get to the point where they actually develop their own personality, their own preferences, their own tastes. And a lot of what we do is take guys from being kind of, you have this great thing about guys being supporting actors in their own life.
Right.
But most of the guys, they're not even supporting actors, they're extras. They're just
they're the flower pot in the backstage left.
Yeah, and they have no character. They have no. They don't have their own personality, so to speak. Their personality is an amalgamate of everyone who's around them. And being alone gives you that freedom and forces you to kind of define your own personality, because you start to, when you go out shopping for a simple thing like food. If you're shopping with, let's say, a wife or a girlfriend, you're not buying exactly what you would want. It always becomes kind of a mix between your tastes and their tastes. Mm-hmm. When you're living with your parents, you're eating what your mom buys most of the time. So once you go out shopping for yourself, you have to start, okay, I like this better than that. I want this more than that. And once you start making those little preferences, that builds into bigger preferences. So the guy who starts off with, I just want a girlfriend, any girl will do. Even, the Gillette Venus ad girl. And then they start moving from there to, okay, maybe I prefer girls who are blonde. I prefer girls with longer hair more than girls with shorter hair. And they kind of builds on that until they have a full-fledged set of preferences that they defend with healthy boundaries.
I would add to that though, and it's a small caveat, so don't take this as like that's bull. But